All right. Good afternoon or good morning, excuse me, for those folks that are tuning in here through LinkedIn Live. I really appreciate all those that are attending to carving out time to sit with myself and Dwight here and the team at Unanet. We're really excited to talk about, obviously, what's on the title here in terms of what needs to be kind of addressed. We've seen a bunch of webinars popping up and kind of talk tracks and white papers about Agentic, and Unanet's like, let's run this head on. Let's kind of talk about what this looks like from a GovCon lens and all of that. So for those of you that this might be a first LinkedIn Live for all of you, there is a chat area underneath. This is meant to be conversational. Me and Dwight definitely have some slides to walk through and kind of talk through some key areas. We've got some key takeaways we want you all to have, but please drop any comments and questions and things that you're working through in the chat as well, and we'll answer those as you go, because this is definitely meant to be collaborative with everybody that's attending, so please don't be shy dropping the questions. I brought Dwight for the hard stuff, so you don't worry about stumping us, but we should be able to cover off all of those as we go. We've got 30 minutes here. I'm going to dive right in. I saw my slides pop up, which is fantastic. So real quick, let's introduce ourselves. So my name is Josh Cramer. I work on our proposal AI side of the house for Unanet. Definitely focused on helping GovCons really speed up their proposal development process by generating not only efficient responses, but really high quality ones at the same time. So that's why they brought me to this thing. But Dwight Gibbs is here as well. Dwight, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, sure. So Dwight Gibbs, until recently, I was founder and CEO of Contractor. I'm now SVP of, I don't know what, at Unanet, but I'm in charge of GovIntel and GovChannel. Been in the software space for a little over 31 years. Seen a lot, and I'm very excited to leverage AI in our offerings. And, Agentic is the new buzzword du jour. So want to clear up some misperceptions and talk about how we can apply Agentic in our day-to-day work.
Perfect. And that tees us up definitely to where our agenda is today. So for those of you tuning in, we're going to really focus on 4 key areas. Of course, talking AI, all things around AI, how people are adopting it, different use cases across GovCon, but then really take it down a lens into that, kind of what AI agents are. I think I've seen probably every large organization talking about AI agents in some form or fashion. We're going to talk about kind of what that is, where they're being applied, and kind of how to think about that. And then, of course, what are the use cases behind it that are going to, start deploying agents where possible? What does that look like for you as a government contractor, whether leader, team player, whatever the case may be? And then a really big piece we're going to spend some time on the end is the risk and compliance. Dwight and I were talking even before this session started about the risk and compliance pieces. Definitely want to cover those off, especially in this marketplace where that's such a priority. I say that as if it's not a priority anywhere else. It is pretty much everywhere, but we all know GovCon, the work that you do, the work that you do for your customers, all of that is really important. So we're going to cover off those kind of risks and compliance use cases as well. So with that, we're going to dive in. Again, we got 30 minutes here together. So really wanted to start off talking about really AI adoption across the space. I think in my role with Unanet, I get a really cool kind of lens of organizations that are coming in that want to try out AI in their business development lifecycle, whether it's finding new ops through GovIntel and GovChannel and really kind of helping navigate what's good for their business and where they want to put resources behind, to really, how do I streamline some of my business development activities, whether it's on the capture side of identifying partners, to win theming, to starting to actually build a proposal. And there's many different use cases around there and many different levels of adoption across the government contracting space. We've got folks that come in that are like, I'm all things AI, I'm pushing it to my customer. I really want to understand how your tools come into play, where I can streamline. And then we have other people that are like, I'm stuck writing proposals. I do them all in Word. I don't love what I do. How do I actually help streamline a lot of those things there? So you definitely see on some of the numbers on this page here, kind of where AI is starting to play in. I think these numbers will continue to scale up exponentially as people really get tied in their use cases. But it's really important to start looking at this and saying, okay, how do I apply this to my organization? What else are others doing? And how is this going to benefit me long term? And we'll love your take on this, Dwight. I know you run into this a lot when you're talking through kind of the different levels of AI adoption and kind of what that looks like. What are you seeing from the things that you're doing?
Yeah, so pretty much every client and prospect we work with is already using AI in some way, shape, or form, right? It could be as simple as summarize this opportunity for me, right? Just a very basic rote application of AI. We always, anytime I hear that, I'm like, hey, are you using just the standard ChatGPT? Because if so, you don't want to be uploading government document in that, government data in that. So there are some folks who are still learning about good guardrails, but we're really seeing the use of AI expanding and going broad and going deep. Things like summarize my potential competition, help me put together a drip campaign. There's just a gazillion different use cases across every section of the business for how people are leveraging AI to work more efficiently and more effectively. And now we're seeing everyone's asking, my joke is everyone has to be buzzword compliant. So pretty much everyone's doing AI and ML, but now you got to have agentic AI or you're not buzzword compliant. How do I use, agentic AI, like really not just, in kind of BS, check a box, but how do I really use it to leverage the technology to improve my business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear the same thing kind of on the proposal side, kind of with summarizing documents and things like that. And it's funny you say that. I came from an org previously where we did machine learning and kind of scrape the internet at scale. And that was the cool buzzword. And then it became the AI piece where how are we actually applying this and actually using this? I think the biggest theme that I see across the space is it's absolutely here. Organizations are adopting it in some form or fashion, whether it's internal or for their customers. As you can tell from all the snippets on the right-hand side of the screen here, the government's investing in it, right? How can I deploy it for my organization? How can I help speed up contracting and acquisitions and things like that? And everybody's leaning into it because we know there's a lot of efficiencies to be found. But with that, it's, what are those actual efficiencies? What's the ROI and things like that? How do we kind of plan for that and realize those efficiencies? That I think we're seeing a lot of organizations start to step back and say, how do I actually measure this? Kind of what is my efficiencies that I've found? And even on my side with spending time with organizations as they're bidding proposals and kind of figuring those things out, I'm like, yes, you just saved a ton of time building a draft. Rather than saying, oh, I saved 40 hours now, I'm like, turn that around and make that a fantastic draft. I'm like, use those efficiencies to focus on winning and kind of figuring out where you can improve, usually kind of a red team on that you used to rush through as kind of the proposal schedule shrunk. Now you've got a lot of free time to kind of really focus on those winning areas. But I think kind of one of the biggest themes I've taken away is AI is here, government contractors using it in various forms, security controls, all encompassing and things like that. But really important to kind of look at it as, what are you doing for fiscal year 2026, 2027 and things like that beyond. So I've definitely been seeing a lot of AI adoption here. And one of the things I'm selfishly excited to talk about, I'm kind of going to ask you a bunch of questions here, Dwight, is really kind of starting to talk about agentic. When I first heard it a couple of times, obviously I took some Latin classes in school. I'm like, agent, I know what that means. I know how to break this word down. But I'm like, wait, what is this actually doing? Is this a workflow? How does this plug into kind of an ecosystem that I already live in? Where do agents plug in? Things like that. So I've got my take on it, but Dwight, I love your kind of breakdown of the agentic stuff. For those of you listening, Dwight is definitely the more technical of the two of us and has a good beat on this.
Yeah, and right now, a lot of people are using just AI in general, whether it's chatbot or like I said, machine learning or however you want to refer to it. And it's like having a really, really smart intern that you've been assigned tasks to, and the intern goes out and does it. And that's great and it works fantastic. So we definitely encourage people to do that in a responsible way. Again, don't upload proprietary information into a generic chatbot, please. But agentic AI is different in that it's not responding to requests. It's actually doing things, right? So they act, and they learn from their outcomes, not just data. And they can use tools, and there's a thing called a MCP, Server Model Context Protocol, that allows these AI agents to access databases, share drives, whatever resources you may have in your organization, to actually proactively act and to accomplish tasks. So they're working towards a goal, not just an individual task. Now, one of the challenges we found with AI agents is that every time you say "and" when you're defining an agent, the performance gets worse and worse. So if you say, I want this agent to do this and this and this and this, we see, this is just our experience, that the performance is not great, right? So what we found is that if you can narrow down the focus of an agent and be very, very specific about a narrow focus, they do actually a really good job. The challenge with that is that then you have agent sprawl, and you need an orchestration layer to manage all the agents. And the orchestration layers, while good, are not great now. Now, I want to be very clear in terms of agentic AI. You're going to see all kinds of vendors saying, "Oh, we have this agentic thing," and many of them aren't, right? So the joke is Microsoft says, "Oh yes, we have an agent that checks for misspellings in documents." I'm like, that's not an agent. That's just spell check. Come on, man. Or we have an agent that summarizes numbers in a column. It's like, come on. So really, you should have an idea of what's just like a cron job or a job that you run on a regular basis, as opposed to an agent that actually proactively takes actions to accomplish a goal. So everyone says you see these announcements. I've got this agentic hammer and everything's an agentic AI. Not really. This is one of the big challenges that we have with our clients is that just because there's a job out there doesn't mean that an agent is the right thing to do that job. You need to understand what you're trying to accomplish. What you're trying to accomplish, what's the right tool for the job? And I joke with my development team that the question isn't really can people use AI? It's do they know when to use it and how to use it? Because a fool with the tool is still a fool. So it's knowing when to use agents versus regular AI versus just a task, and how to do that with the least risk. And I saw Daniel, I think, had the and problem, also a problem with prompting the agent. Daniel, 100%. And this is, when you're going through and putting together your prompts, every time you're anding, you're making things more difficult for yourself.
I like to say, Dwight, it's when I think of the agents and kind of what you just said there, I feel like it follows the same path and something that we coach when people are building proposals. Obviously, when they're in our tool, there's a lot of workflows there to help with multi-prompting and things like that. But when they're using, commercial tools like ChatGPT, like you said, I tell everyone really kind of shrink down the prompts. If you make it too complex, you're going to overwhelm the system, right? You're not going to like the output. If you come in there, and I was, doing a session with Matt Simonson, our team yesterday, where he's like, write me an amazing proposal, 25 pages, please. And he's like, I just sit back and watch. And I'm like, you get like 6.5. It reads terrible. There's not much content because there's only so much that it can do at one time. And it sounds like that's something that kind of the agents run into too. So is it a more kind of over prompting or over engineering with agents? Is that why they're struggling to kind of do multitask on top of each other?
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're right at the very beginning of Agentic, right? This is, and my joke is, this is as bad as it's ever going to be. But there are still plenty of challenges in terms of overwhelming an agent with work to do. And if you give the agents too much work and a lack of specificity, garbage in, garbage out. You're not going to be happy with what comes back. I mean, just today I was working with a relatively complex document from the government and putting together a prompt to extract the information I needed in the format I needed it. It was just like, it was excruciating. And I realized, okay, Dwight, follow your own advice, because I was trying to have it do too much at one time. So I finally broke it down to here, do this, then do this, then do this. And it worked out much, much better. And that's just a stupid AI request. Like I said, it gets more complex when you have agentic AI, which is going out and operating on its own based on the environment in which it's operating.
Yeah, and I know we'll get to the kind of control piece and the risk piece here at the end, but right away I'm like, what worries me a little bit, and kind of one of the things as it evolves that I want to better understand is, what are the actual tasks it's doing? It's cool if you read my data. It's cool if you give me the insight back. Like lots of our customers will use our chat tool, which is a chat tool workspace to evaluate ops, but they still have that human in the loop that's like, all right, like I like this, but I really want to get granular on where does my past performance map, and they'll do a verification there. And we enable that, but with a chat with an agent, like kind of one of the use cases on the top here is I found an op, I evaluated the op, I said the op's good. Let me go tell the capture manager they've got tasks to do. I definitely see some resistance as that rolls in, kind of as they're, kind of starting to deploy these type of things.
Yeah, and one thing, anyone who talks to Unanet folks will always hear human in the loop, right? Because we're very focused on human in the loop. This is new stuff. Everyone's we've been around for ages. Yeah, well, no, AI hasn't, not in production like this. So keeping the human in the loop to make sure that the AI is doing what you expect is super, super important. I mentioned MCP servers that give you access to databases, shared drive, other resources in your environment. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that's, from a security perspective, I'm like, that's opening up a lot. So if there is an issue and I can do prompt poisoning, to get access to data I shouldn't, as a longtime IT guy, It makes me new stuff makes me worry because it hasn't been exercised. We're still having problems with Cisco iOS in terms of security defects. Some of these MCP servers have only been around for months, not years. So I do have some concerns from a security perspective. That doesn't mean don't use it. That just means you need to be very thoughtful with how you apply it and what guardrails you have with it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Those of you tuning in, I hope you're not picking up a theme that we're like agents are, really hard. They're, don't use them, things like that. The tech will get there, right? I think, as Dwight said, it's never going to get worse than it is now. But I think that there's a lot of utility and opportunity there. And some of the things we're exploring with Unanet is, I think, Dwight, especially like through your product, is how do we actually go and verify quotes that we get when we bring it in, do certain VARs and things like that, and going actually doing the tasks for updates. Those are huge time savers. When I worked at a value-added reseller, following up on quotes and the timing, because many of these turns are 48 hours, 72 hours. I need them timely to have an agent to help with that. Sounds so cool, right? To turn around and be like, I've hit all my distributors, I pulled my quotes back. That is where I'm excited to get to. But for those of you listening, it's kind of setting the stage of where we're at now. So I'd say when you hear people say, I've got agents running all over my platform, they're going to do all these things for you. Questions like, how do you validate that? How do you, as I think, Dwight, you had said, the orchestration layer, how are you on top of the agents, making sure that they're pulling those things in, are all things that you should be mindful of as you're kind of evaluating those type of things.
Yeah, and purely, I talked to one of our clients who said, I just want to have an agent that goes and finds the right ops, gets the pricing, puts the quote together and submits it. Whoa. That works great in theory. Absolutely, positively works well in theory. But in practice, if you're submitting a quote, that is a promise to the government that you will do whatever's attached to that quote at that price. So saying that you're going to have an agent go submit that, like, oh God, it's like, makes my head hurt, makes my teeth itch. So in the fullness of time, we'll eventually get there. We're not there right now.
Yeah, and it's and I love your point about the pricing piece. I know probably the most skepticism always comes from the finance side of the house when it comes to AI, because they still have to close the books whether AI is something or not. They're never going to take the human out of the loop, at least not anytime soon. Do we consolidate the accounts the right way? Are we pulling in the right forms, and are we documenting everything? To then turn around and say, oh, the agent's going to do all that for you. That's really cool from many times a board member level, but from the day-to-day, it is something like, love to get there. Let's keep pushing towards that, but then let's take it for what it is right now, which I think some of those things that, kind of covered off on kind of the right-hand side there, awesome to build to that. And those are the things that we're looking at at Unanet, kind of how to do that and deploy that, but doing it in a way that's actually going to, like you said, not over prompt it, have reliability with the engine, with the agents doing the work and pulling that information in.
Yeah, and this is the nice thing about the agents we have now and some of the AI tools are you can ask it to show its work, right? So show me how you got to this, so I can follow your chain of thinking, because particularly on when this is new and you haven't done it before, being able to see how the AI got to its answer is super useful, and that also helps you change your prompts and change the goals for which the AI is responsible. So sorry, rambling.
No, please. I love talking about these things with you because I learned from you, because you built these and kind of figure out where it deploys. And these are some of the use cases that we're seeing it deployed now. I can speak from the proposal side of things. Definitely awesome when it sits in the workflow. I think when I have conversations with new prospects or customers that just come on board to kind of get them out of the AI is not just a chatbot. It's not just generating content for you. There's so much that AI can do outside of that actually being a normal human workflow that you can then, like you said, Dwight, audit back to wherever it learns from. That's a big thing for us, is like, if you go to write a section, go tell me exactly where my content you're reading that from. So me, I can control that, but then I know the output's going to be that much stronger. I know on the CRM side of things, definitely helping wrap those inbounds that come in. Are we following up with the right ones? Are we engaging our partners the way that we want? Things like that are already use cases that are out there. And of course, I'm so excited about the things that are coming as well. And I don't know, kind of, as we look at the market intel piece, where do you see the kind of the biggest pieces that these agents could play, Dwight?
Yeah, I think a lot of the GovIntel side is, what's coming out that would be easy for us to bid, because that's something, if it has a bill of materials, the first thing is, do we have letter of supply? Can we actually, get this stuff? And if so, all right, let's put together, automatically have the agent put together the BOM and go out to the right disties. When I say the right disty, it's, the whole idea is, who have we used in the past, because there's a trust element there.
Yep.
So there, there's some there's some use cases that are kind of right down the middle, which are great and should be automated for sure. But when it comes down to things like, hey, what margin are we going to put on products, or how are we going to do pricing for proposals? That's really something where you got to have a person taking a look at that. And the answer may be, hey, the AI agent looked and said, historically, this is what we've done. Fantastic. That's awesome. But maybe it's hey, this is a new agency we're trying to get into. Maybe we need to be a little more aggressive on pricing, right? So there is that, the human in the loop to review and critique, if you will, the AI assignment. So for GovIntel, it's the identification and the actual getting pricing. The other thing that we're working on is actually, you having an MCP server that allows us to go into the ERP system, right? To see who's available, when will people be available? Have we done work in the past? How did that go? What did this look like? What partners have we used? How was our experience with that partner? Just going through and asking the questions that a good proposal manager would be asking, right? But automatically going through and identifying that and pulling that all together.
None of this sounds like it'll be challenging to have folks adopt at all, Dwight. And that is sarcasm for those of you who can't see my face, because I spend a lot of my time on the proposal side of things where people are like, I definitely want a tool. But then maybe they only do 2 or 3 proposals, every quarter. And then when they hop in, they're like, oh, I saw this. I know it does everything for me, or it does key things for me, but I forget how this flows, or I forget what key piece I'm supposed to plug in. And we're always like, stay in the tool for all the stuff that you're using, whether you're RFIs, building content, sending messages to customers. You can do a lot of that stuff in there. And once they dig in, then they're like, okay, cool. Like, I love this. I can't live without this. But the ones that are still new to it are like, what's it going to do for me? And opportunity intel side, that's kind of where I come from, is there's always skepticism. I think there's been a big data cut on how to do it. There's research teams that try to do it at scale. There's different types of kind of plugins and kind of scraping with AI to figure it out. And you're always going to get the capture manager who's like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what I'm looking at. I know what I want to see. And there's a good, I'd say a healthy balance between the two. Here's the tech. Here's the person who's doing it. Let's match the use cases with what can actually be done. That's always fun to get people into it and engage with it.
Well, the capture managers really are the ones who can say, I had my 20 years to figure out, what's a winning proposal look like.
Yep.
So if it was, if it was easy, someone would have already done it. The whole idea that, AI will just crank out your winning proposal and you submit it. That's adorable. Bless your heart. Yeah. I mean, at some point, is that possible? Hey, yeah, absolutely, positively, but not right now. I mean, and for us, we and Josh, you live this, talking to capture managers who look at the first versions, and they're like, this really isn't highlighting what I know this CO, or I know this sub agency or agency, and this is really what they want to see. It's that tribal knowledge, what's in your head that you've built up over the last X decades to know what a winning proposal is for this agency, sub agency, CO, whatever it is.
Yep. Probably with the time remaining here, we've got to talk about with risks. I'm sure there's some questions in the chat that will come in. But it's a big piece. Can't talk AI without talking risks. You've got more horror stories of some cavalier, friends that you've got that approach this, and I'm like, it's like I want to move fast, but at the same time, we got to be mindful of like these things. So, what are kind of some of the things that we should be mindful of as we're looking at Agentic here, Dwight?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I see new AI models, release and feel like I'm going to adopt that immediately, like, whoa, cowboy, hold on there. Let's do a little testing, shall we? Because I think GPT-5 was released, and in under 12 hours, someone had jailbroken it, right? And it's just like, this is really, really dangerous, because keep in mind, on the back end, it's got access to whatever you give access to, right? So you need to be thinking about, what does this thing have access to? So once you get an MCP server where it can really, make, ideally you would narrow down what, queries it can actually issue. But some people I've talked to are like, just give it full rights. Like, whoa, no, you don't want to do that. Because there is risk here. And I want to be very clear. I'm not saying it's risky, don't do it. I'm saying is there is risk that you need to be aware of, you need to identify, and you need to mitigate that risk. So like, with chat help bots, it's like, well, if you narrow down what it has access to, there's less risk, right? But if you say, oh yeah, we'll give it rights to to look at the client database, which may have user records in there, I'm like, whoa, I don't think you want to do that, right? So it's, as with any new technology, there's always going to be, idiosyncrasy, shall we say, that we need to be aware of. So, early adopters, this is the whole pioneers ended up with arrows in their back. It's dangerous, I think, to be an early adopter in the AI space if you don't really have a good handle on what the risk is, what access the AI has, and then how you're presenting that out to the end user.
I love that. I think it's risks are out there, but it's how you mitigate them and prepare for them that lets you take advantage of the technology, but also not expose yourself. That's something we tell organizations. Of course, we want everyone using our proposal tool, of course, but we recognize that people are evaluating tools all over the place. And I say, listen, for the security piece, get the T's and C's, understand what they're doing with your data. What are they doing? What are they training with it? Where's it going? Whether it's us or not, be very mindful of where that is. Because once you're confident in that, then you can run. And I tell people, like, once your IT is not looking over your shoulder and being like, hey, using apps you shouldn't have, I haven't approved them. Once you can talk about the enterprise level and say, my whole business is deploying X, and the whole team's confident in it, then that adoption goes really quickly. And then they're like, sure, what are you using it for? How can I use it over here? But I think it's really important as come through the risk lens, ask the hard questions of any vendor that you're looking at. We welcome them. It's kind of where we kind of the crux of what we built the tool on top of was making sure it was secure for this marketplace. But then turn that around and say, okay, now that I've met the kind of risk requirements that I have to understand and kind of plan for, now I can go and run. I don't have to look back and be like, okay, did I expose myself? Did I upload 25 years of my company's history since 95 and really kind of build out, kind of our brand and waste it all because I had a quick term proposal? So there's always those things to kind of be mindful of as we go after it. So I know we've got 3 minutes left. I'm going to kind of give you a Q&A question as a reporter here, Dwight. Would love to know kind of as you're looking at agents and kind of their potential, where would you like to see them kind of land and help the most in kind of that GovCon life cycle of the businesses that are tuning in?
Yeah, so the question I ask clients up front is, what are the most awful, horrible jobs that you're doing that you would love to see automated away? And that's a serious question because, a lot of clients, God, I just don't want to review all the ops or, just like the getting pricing and going out to subs, just so painful. It's like, that kind of tells me where do we want to focus? What everyone tells me is, I actually love figuring out how we're going to do the pricing, what's the team going to look like. That's the creative stuff that people love, and they do it well, and that's awesome. Anything that's grunt, rote, that's where we should be focused to say, let's get rid of that stuff. Following up, like the whole, following up with our teaming partner, being like, hey, this is due tomorrow. Where are you? All that stuff. Yeah, I don't want to have to do that. That's just painful, tedious, awful stuff. If that can be automated away, man, I'm here for it. I'm totally here for it.
I'm through the same lens. I like your piece about the creative. It's like you want to really emphasize the creative. I call it like the strategic of how am I going to win this thing, and I want to help. Kind of. I like to see business development folks kind of automate the unfun tasks. That's what I tell people is like not just from the generating the draft, but also the proposal management piece, assigning stuff, getting people to acknowledge it, getting people to work through workflow. PMs, many times project managers and proposal managers don't get the credit they do for kind of having to navigate all that. And I'm like, it's not fun. The first time I saw proposal managers like, yeah, I built 40 hours this week running a proposal. I'm like, for what? They're like, coordinating the meetings, doing the follow-up, sending the deck after, making sure it's drafting. And I'm like, man, I can't wait until a lot of that becomes automated, and that can help a lot of those folks be more creative, more strategic with those things.
Oh yeah, and that is actually the hardest thing for AI is to be creative in your voice for your company, right? So everyone's like, oh, it puts together documents. I'm like, yeah, but that's not creative. That's rote. And this is why, the people who say, oh, I want the thing to pop out the proposal that I'm going to submit to my client. I'm like, it can, but you're not going to win.
No, you're not going to love it. Awesome. Well, Dwight, I appreciate the time. We've got 1 minute left for anyone that wants to drop in any more Q&A that's in here. These sessions also run over, so if you've got questions after, please shoot them over as well. But we really appreciate for those of you that have tuned in to kind of listen to Dwight and I talk about agents and AI and where it's going. As you know, Unanet always welcomes these type of conversations. If you have follow-up, things you want to learn more about products or just really on the topic, please don't be shy in sharing those over. We welcome those conversations, and we love to talk through these things as they evolve.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you showing up and listening to us ramble. Look forward to the next one.